Pretty cool, right? And you've probably seen this all over the internet and YouTube. But I'm Frugal Tesla Guy, and I'm going to show you how you can do this for around 20 bucks. A little less than a year ago, I happened to come across a video showing how to install an LED light strip in your Frunk for extra light. I was really intrigued by this, but never really got around to actually doing it. Now, I'll have a link to that video in the description below if you're interested. But what I like about this modification is the fact that there genuinely is a problem with lighting in the Frunk, especially at night. And this is a great solution. However, it seems that over the last few months, there has been an explosion of aftermarket companies that have started selling kits that average around 50 bucks, give or take, depending on if you want to have the option to change the color or if you just want one static color. The price seemed kind of steep to me, so after digging around a little, I found a white LED light strip for 20 bucks and decided to have a go at it. So where we're going to start is we are going to need access to the wires themselves to this switch. We want to tap into the power that the switch for the Frunk goes into. So it's really actually quite simple. We've got this panel right here, and it's going to be different for newer models, but it's going to be the same basic concept here. So for the older model, I have the 2018 long range rear wheel drive. We're just going to take the bottom here and just kind of pop it out. It's pretty simple. I've done this a lot of times. It's actually very simple. And there you can see there's this back of the switch. Here's where it plugs in. Now, this is where things get important because you need to make sure you understand the wire colors that you have. Now for mine, I've got purple, black, and I've also got gray in there. So we are going to separate this purple wire, and we're not going to do anything with it because this purple wire is actually for the switch, but the black and gray is the positive and negative that we're going to need to tap into for the 12 volt. So typically you're going to have the red to the gray, and then you're going to have black to black here, or the black to the orange, or whatever color it may be. And again, typically what I've seen here is that the purple is typically just going to be the switch. So the easiest way to really get access to this and work with it is to disconnect it. And you just kind of have to force it, just kind of give it a good tug. There you go, and it's simple enough, and you can put this aside. So now you'll kind of have easier access to this. Now, I can kind of pull this out a little bit more as well, a little bit more play in here, but this is what we're going to be working with here. Now, another thing we need to do before we do anything with the wires is we need to make sure that we disconnect the 12 volt battery. So, as you may or may not know, this is where you get it. You just take this panel right here, and it just pops off. It's just connected by clips. And of course, you can see the 12 volt battery right over here. All I'm going to do is take the black one, I'm going to disconnect that one, and we should be good to go. Now, to make sure it doesn't make any contact with anything metal with the car, we don't want to do a short. It's going to wrap this with a cloth so it can't touch anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it right there and then do the work. Now, originally I was going to connect everything using a T-tap wire connector to avoid cutting any wires. But I decided to go a different route by actually cutting the wires and using waterproof butt connectors. And yes, a heat gun would be better to use in this situation, but I don't have one. And as long as you're careful, a lighter works just as well. So you can see now everything is attached. And what I've done, actually, I had some extra red and black wire. I wanted to make this a little bit longer because it was not quite long enough. So I had to put a little extension in here. So this is the LED light strip. Then I've got some butt connectors right here, which then go to some more black and red wire. And then that goes to the actual plug here. So I've got the red and the gray spliced right here, or put together, and then going back to the plug on this end. Then I've got the black wire, two of them going through this end, and then the one wire going to the plug here. So when we go ahead and plug this in, Now you would think it would turn on, but that's actually not the case, because notice this light isn't on either. So the only way you can test it is to push this button right here. Now I've got the automatic opening and closing frunk, so I'm going to go ahead and test this, but it will probably close on top of the camera here, but we'll go ahead and see what happens. So there you have it. You've got the, I can't see it, but you can see it with the camera. You've got the light from the button, and you've got the LED lights on. So let's open this back up and tidy everything back up. So I want to make sure that there's no confusion, that when you open up this panel and you see that your color scheme is different with the wires, and you're thinking to yourself, well, which one am I going to do red to and which am I going to do black to? And then which one don't I touch at all? Well, there's a way to test that. So let's start with the configuration that I have now. So as I mentioned, I have the red to the gray wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the red tip right here. And by the way, this voltmeter is set to DCV 20. So you go to the DCV section and make sure that the arrow here is pointed to 20. So that's where I've got it set to. Now I take the red and I put it in here. Now you want to make sure it's touching in there, because if it's not, you're not going to get any kind of reading, and those holes are kind of small. But you can see here I have 12.57, so that's telling you that if you have 12 or more volts coming out of this, that you have the right configuration. So the red in this case would be positive and the black would be negative. So again, with that said, the red is on the gray and the black is on the black here. What we have here is purple. That's the relay switch. This is again what tells the computer, hey, go ahead and activate this latch here to open up the frunk. So that's the one you don't want to touch. Now let's do an example of, let's say I do opposite. Let's do red on the black and let's do black on the gray. See if I can get, sometimes you have to make sure it gets in there. Okay, so if you look, it's minus 12.57. So what that tells you is that that's opposite. So you need to make sure that it's positive 12 plus, and then that will tell you. If it's positive 12 plus, the one that the red one was touching is going to be your positive one, and the one that your black one was touching is going to be your negative one. Okay, see how I'm getting like a negative 4.7? All right, so this is a situation where I've got the black on the purple and the red on the black. And you can see I've got a negative 4.7. And then I'm going to go ahead and reverse that, red on the purple and black on the black. Now I've got 4.71. Let's do that on the gray. And you'll notice it's minus 7.32. And then over here, if I do the black on the purple and the red on the gray, now I've got 7.32. So what that tells you is if it's not 12 or higher, you're not getting 12 volts and you're not tapping into the positive and negative. But if we do this again one more time, black on the black here, red on the red, now I've got 12.5. So you got the 12 or higher, and that's the correct configuration. So just keep playing around with it. If you're not getting 12.5 or 12 or higher, keep playing around with the configuration with these red and black. And once you know what you've tapped into, the red's going to be your positive, and the black one is going to be your negative. Now, we don't know for sure what is coming out of the factory from these LED lights. So the best thing to do before you really start soldering anything or crimping anything down, just attach the wires, the black and red wires from the LED light, and that should give you the correct configuration and it should work. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind when you're doing this. You see how the LED light is on right now? That tells me that the power is on. Now, once these LED lights turn off after about 10 minutes, there's no power coming to this switch. So you need to make sure that when you're doing this test with the meter that there's power to the switch. So just make sure when you're doing that, you can even just kind of check. This is a way to check, because if you don't have the lights hooked up, you can't tell, right? But if you do this, let's go ahead and plug this in. Plug it in that way instead. You see how this light is on? That light is on, telling you, okay, there's power going to the switch. So you can go ahead and activate and do the test. But if that is off, then what you're going to need to do is just kind of tap this button, and then that will turn that light back on. See how it just turned off? It's been 10 minutes and now that light is off as well. So what I've got to do is push this button, and then it will put power back on for about 10 minutes. Now I'm not going to do that right now because, again, I don't want to close the frunk, but you get the idea. All right, so before we start putting these in, what I want you to show you here is that this is the kind of light strip that I wanted. All sides, except for one part of the lower here, is actually illuminated. So that's what you want. So when you put it in the weather stripping, you want the light facing down as it goes around, and then tuck it under in there, and then that's where you'll get that nice illumination around here. So let's get to it. We'll start on this end here, and then eventually we'll probably have to cut on this right here. So we'll get to that in a second. Okay, after doing all that and kind of checking everything, the lights did turn off between the rolling of me installing it to showing you this point right now. And if you look closely, you will see on this strip there are these little lines. So I can cut at these lines, and then I take this little rubber piece and I'll just put it over the edge. There's this little rubber piece. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it where I need to, and then we'll really pretty much be able to wrap this thing up. All right, so now I've cut it where I need to. I'm going to go ahead and put this little rubber piece on the end to kind of keep that waterproofing going. And then this just kind of goes right up in here. So I may have to cut it one more down. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. I may have to just cut it right there. That shouldn't be too big of a problem. I have to cut it one more line. There we go. Put the rubber piece back on, and yeah, just kind of stop short a little bit, but not that big of a deal. I wanted it to be a nice little, perfect little butted up end, but unfortunately those lines aren't exactly where you probably need them to be. But that should pretty much do it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and test it. Now, we'll have to close this because I have the automatic frunk, but we'll see if this still works after cutting it, especially. That's a little bit of a concern, obviously. Yep, still works. So now I just have to go ahead and put that piece back on. So now we just have to put this thing back on, and we just want to kind of avoid the wires kind of being, so there's right here, this piece kind of goes down into this hole. This one right here goes into this hole right here. So we want to make sure that we're not getting these wires in places where clips go. But I think what I might do is put it like so. Might do that. That might be the best. And then yeah. So all I have is that little wire right there, not a problem. Everything else seems to be in place. So the next question is, how long do the lights stay on after the trunk is closed? It's kind of like the question, does the refrigerator light really turn off after you close the door? So I put a timer in the frunk, and within seconds after my timer hit 10 minutes, the phone went into lock screen mode. But that's actually also when the lights turned off. So I think it's safe to say that the lights turn off after 10 minutes, which is also the same amount of time the lights turn off when the frunk is open as well. Some of the kits now offer a simple spliced cable, allowing you to plug the OEM cable and the LED light strip into it, and then plugging that into the frunk button. No cutting cables, no splicing, no crimping. So if that's worth the extra money to you, then that's the easiest way to go. But if you're like me and want to save some money and don't mind a little work, then what I just showed you is a great option. Now, I paid $20 for my LED light strip, but found one for $15 a few days later, and quite honestly, I can't imagine mine's any better. However, if you want the option to change colors, the cheapest I could find was just under $40. Now, one quick thing to remember when you're shopping for LED light strips is you don't need a power cable because you'll be cutting and exposing the red and black wires. Now, this is obviously not a project or even a modification for everyone. I'm sure some of you are watching this video and cringing at the thought of cutting any wires. I get it, it can be scary. But for me, I don't mind, it's not a big deal. But I also like the overall practicality of the light strip because it adds more light where it's needed. Plus, it looks pretty cool in the process. Now, I don't need to change colors or have the lights react to music. And that's another reason why I was able to do this inexpensively. So what do you think? Does something like this interest you? If so, which route do you plan on going? Let me know in the comment section below. Well, that's it for now. You know the drill. Like, subscribe, and stay positively charged.